Oh, there we go. We're live. Hey,
What's
YouTube.
up?
I'm Richard. It's been a while since we've done a live thing, so I'm working through technical difficulties as I always do. Uh, Welcome to the show. Today is the after show of the first session of Rukvar's Crusade, the first community campaign. I'm here with the special guest, who has also happened to be the last guest on a live stream. We both attempted to start the RPG Writer Workshop and then got sucked into making this campaign instead. It's Zach Kraft, aka Raiken Bliksem.
Howdy.
Welcome back to the show, Zach. So, we're just gonna dive right into talking about this second time really playing D&D. Your brother already came and called you out for using the same character.
Sort of. Sort of.
Thoughts? What was going into it? What was your biggest concern or hurdle stepping into the game?
The biggest thing was making sure I didn't make a fool of myself. I had to getting into before the actual session started was overcoming the RPG portion of it, which I kind of went a whole week of just trying to find out voices to just being able to use my own, I guess. So it just worked out better that way, and I'm loving it so far. And then trying to dumb myself down wasn't very hard either. So so
That's good to know. Voices are always a weird place to be. So I was really interested in your take on that, since you do come from watching a lot of Critical Role, and then suddenly you're doing it. You know, you played with your brother first time on like a real game, and then it also happened to be recorded and then streamed later. How did you feel stepping into there with Chris and Daniel doing voices? Did you feel like you had to step it up, or were you pretty comfortable with where you were at?
I was very comfortable
Okay.
because they definitely helped out prior to starting and then afterwards too. And it just made it more sense as I tweaked my character around from session 0 to session 1. Not only with a couple of different feature changes, but to go forth and continue it was just
Mhm.
too hard to try to remember. So I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna talk normal. And then hearing them with their voices kind of just made it easier for me because I didn't have to worry about, I have to do better than them or
Yeah.
whatever have you. I just went with the flow and tried to make as much jokes as I could, and I had a
Yeah,
blast with it.
you guys were all about the puns, which is pretty common. That's pretty standard. Daniel's actually in the chat. He said D&D is all about making a fool of yourself, and that's where the fun comes from. So I think you did a good job making a fool of yourself.
Oh yeah.
I made a fool of
Hey,
myself. We all made a fool of ourselves, and it was
we
enjoyable.
we've got the shoes and the purse, man. The shoes and the purse.
The shoes and the purse. That okay. So now this is my DM question: is why? Why
Why
did you
not?
want those?
Why not? You got to have something to strive for, and striving for whatever that was worked. I mean, it played out. It does play out. There's a reason for the shoes. It does play out.
Okay. So you found that as like your calling, so to speak, very early on, which we don't want to give any spoilers to anybody, but yeah, you handled it.
Well, not just that, but just the fact of getting that and showing how my character's gonna play out does, it even played out in the first session. Just the goofiness and the not understanding things and thinking that Tandy was a boy. I mean, it does play. It makes it more. It makes it enjoyable for me because it makes me get away from that I'm not comfortable zone.
Yeah.
So
You were able to relax a little bit and just
yes,
have fun with it.
yes.
You mentioned that your character changed from session 0 to session 1. What kind of changes did you make moving into session 1?
Well, session 0 was literally the day or two before, or when a day or two before that, you told me that I was going to be part of the campaign. So I had to make a
Yeah.
character within 2 days. Most of it was on the fly, and I didn't really know much of the Aasimar background and what I wanted to do. So I changed it from being, having blue eyes to having the angel golden eyes, and my character was going to be a fisherman, and he was more of a trader fisherman combo, and then bringing into where I was from and not trying to go too far into it, but knowing what my goal is making it a lot easier too, and it will play out in the next couple sessions. Hopefully we can make that work, but it makes me feel more comfortable. What else did I change? I have an eye patch.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that. Eye patch.
So
Bold decision.
it's well, it started off originally because I didn't notice it in the regular model, and when he colored it, I'm like, oh, I have an eye patch. But I made it so that when I was in my training, I disobeyed and I got struck. So that was my way to bear my burden, I guess, in a sense. It was.
You took a lightning bolt to the face.
I did take a lightning bolt to the face.
Okay.
I did.
And survived.
I really did.
That's something. That's something. That's big. Since we've already played session 2, we already knew about that. Hope I didn't just break my thing. I think my system is having issues. Let's talk about your character. Moving ahead, you guys are now level 4. And for anyone who's watching, I don't make it very clear in the sessions when the level up happens. I think I mention it, but then I kind of gloss over any parts where we're actually leveling up. And I'm doing a very accelerated leveling for this just to get them stronger, so it's a more epic adventure in a shorter time. That's where I'm going with it. But you were hit level 4. You were wondering between feats and ability score improvement. What are you thinking, and what is your kind of pros and cons thought on that?
Well, I thought if I did the ability score, it would help a little bit with my intelligence or constitution, because I'm not the smartest person in the world. But I kind of want to do a feat, but I'm not sure what one I want to do. I was torn between Sentinel and Warcaster.
That was a really good one.
Right. Or, I mean, I was reading Spellcast or Spell Sniper Cleric, but I mean, apparently my spells, or anybody's spells for that matter, in that last session was terrible. We couldn't hit a broadside of a barn if we were standing a foot in front of it.
That was a rough fight.
I've never seen an hour-long level 1 fight before. And then in your video for Tempest Clerics, you had the Elemental Adept, and I thought that would be good, but we haven't come across anything at all really that had any sort of elemental weaknesses or strengths. So I was like, okay, maybe not.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also thought of there was one more, Magic Initiate Cleric, but
okay.
So I'm still kind of torn. I'm gonna figure that out later tonight and go forth with that and surprise you. But maybe I should actually use my Tempest Cleric spells for the first time ever, because and you even hinted to me. You're like, do you want to move? And I'm like, no, I'm okay. I'm gonna stay where I'm at. And then I decimated somebody with a guiding bolt when I should have used Thunderwave and walked up and decimated the whole place, and it would have been a 5-minute fight. But I mean, I guess we'll see how it goes.
That first session was an interesting experience for me too, because I've never run a session just straight up for relative strangers before. That's a lie. I kind of did. Like, one of my long-term campaigns, I was called after I started my YouTube channel, and I was really little, and they were like, hey, do you want to come run a session? And it was like a guy who taught me how to sword fight briefly for like 3 months, and then his buddies. And so, like, I knew the one guy, but I didn't know anybody else. And then getting into that, had that similar, there was a hurdle we had to get over in our session and in theirs, where we are, like, figuring it out. You know, I'm sure you felt it where you're like, what do I do? What can I do? There's always that kind of timid or trepidation of stepping into the world and coming up with things. I think you guys did a great job. I think for a first-time player, you did swimmingly. I know I was nervous as hell trying to get you guys on the right path and get you into the adventure. But then we did run into that huge hiccup of the fight.
Emphasis on huge hiccup.
It was the dice were not in our favor. You said you never seen that. How did you feel about that fight? Like, when did it start getting like tiresome for you?
When they started running away, it's like, we had so many opportunities. I still didn't know how to use spells. I forgot that spell slots were a thing. So after I used with Tandy and the little the munchkin with the with the bandits, and I used command and forgot that was a spell slot, and I wasted that when I could have just used anything else. And so that kind of left me with only one, and I didn't know many cantrips that had any sort of power to them, so all I had was Sacred Flame.
Yeah.
And I hit once, didn't do much damage. I felt really good when I decimated one person with that guiding bolt, because it made it look like King Ooga Dooga, whatever is we did that 150 names.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oof.
When that happened, I should have hit that same guy, so he would have exploded. It would have been great. But and it was funny because Zavis was trying to reason with and not fight, and I'm like, no, we're just gonna go guns blazing, and
yeah. You were all gung ho. Zavis wanted to be the diplomat kind of character.
And it's sad that most people died due to psychic damage.
It is. We
killed people by talking.
Is the audio a bit low? Let's crank up the audio. It might be lower, Jack. We're having all kinds of weird issues. I'm gonna put this closer to my face. We'll keep going. Just turn up the volume.
Turn up the volume.
I don't know. We're trying to work through this. Yeah, diplomacy in D&D is a weird thing, especially at low levels, especially with new players. Oh, that's an interesting one. Daniel just mentioned the Tavern Brawler feat is an interesting one. Or he's talking about the
improvised weapons.
The improvised weapon thing. Anyways, diplomacy on a first level, from a DM's perspective, this is my opinion. A lot of times we want to get the fight, like a first fight, over with. At least I do. I like, because it's fun. It's like you get in there, you have a quick fight. Quick, right? That was the idea. And then it's over, and you're like, you become more of a team after surviving a little battle. Diplomacy is always a weird spot, and it's perfectly understandable though for heroes. So that's something I'm honestly working on as a DM, is to figure out how to make an encounter that's more, what's the word? More. I've totally lost the word. It gives more leeway for diplomacy moments, without forcing the players into a fight. And then I admitted mistake in that. I'll admit, hobgoblins are a 1/2 challenge rating, so a party of 1 should only really fight 2 of them, according to the player handbook, DM's guide. I for some reason thought they were a 1/4, which is why I had 5 of them there. I was like, oh yeah, you guys can take these on, no problem. And then as we were fighting, I'm realizing, oh, their AC is 18, which makes them really hard to hit at that low level. They didn't have a lot of health, but it was enough to be annoying. And then on top of that, the dice.
My AC is 18, and I was getting hit like you wouldn't believe.
The dice. It was the dice on that. I should not have been rolling that well. I am thankful that I was, though, because I love to see my players kind of on the heel and taking being in a little trouble. Jack is saying you were brilliant.
I am.
And very at ease, so yeah, you have them. Everyone's fooled. No one believes that this was your first or second time playing. I don't believe it.
None of the players believe that I don't drink my alcohol either, which is good. Still true.
Yes, and Daniel also mentioned hobgoblins have shield and chainmail, not studded leather, like I had said. Yeah.
Hey, it's your own story.
Hey,
we had fun with it. It worked out.
Had really thick studded leather. and that is that. But you're going to be going up against other hobgoblins, if you couldn't already tell. There's a lot of them to fight at higher levels. I want to get into a bit of your character's backstory,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Oh,
You
of
don't
course.
have to get into any super secret things that you don't want people to know. But I think most of the other players are good at separating, the player knowledge versus character knowledge, which I thought you did a pretty good job of that myself as well. So what is the history of Raiken that you ended up landing on?
Well, Raiken lives on a island there's 3 islands of Valaros. Those islands are basically the protector of a chapel or a temple of Castalos, which is an angel. And I had no idea about that at first. And at 20 years old, I was just walking down normally, and my village was decimated by some entity or some creature and his minions, and ended up finding out that my mother has been murdered, and my whole town was just destroyed. And that's the town of Kalma, the village of Kalma. So I got onto a ship, and I sailed with them for 4 years back and forth. And as we were on our normal voyage, massive storm hit, and my character, which is hilarious, is terrified of storms, and he's a Tempest Cleric. Makes it better. So that's where the whole rabbit's foot comes into play. I hold my rabbit's foot when I'm scared, and use that to calm the storm, in a sense. So I haven't really determined if I've died or not during that storm, but I ended up waking up on an island, walked into the center of the island, and found this temple with cloaked figures that were wearing white and gold trimmed cloaks. Trained with them for a year to find out that, I think that, well, this will come in anyway, so it's fine to tell them, but my grandfather is Castalos, the angel. So that's where I get my powers from, and I've never actually seen him or talked to him. I might just be a kook because I'm not that smart, but something gives me abilities that I clearly can't use. So or no remember to use, but because of that year-long process, I became a protector of Valaros, which is if you know history, in our world that we're making,
Yes.
is a very big thing because they protect the islands to prevent anybody coming into that temple. So that's where my character gets his main backstory, and hopefully soon I'll have more of a insight on if Castalos is really real or not. So
Okay, so that's an interesting thing. You discovered somehow that your grandfather is this angel, which makes sense. You're an Aasimar, they have the celestial bloodline. Cool. But then also your grandpa is also kind of your deity, is what I've kind of gathered.
Yes.
We actually never sat down and talked about this.
yes.
But I think that's an interesting take on it. So Castalos. Am I pronouncing it right?
Castalos.
Castalos is an angel and a deity of the Tempest. Right? So far?
Yes, which if we were to continue this story even further,
Uh-huh.
there's somebody higher than Castalos that he worships as well. Because he's an angel, there's got to be somebody higher than him.
Does there?
Maybe.
It's
As a
okay.
DM, that's your
So-
choice.
So my follow-up question though is, if he's your grandpa, he's the deity, you haven't seen him. Has anyone seen him?
That I know of, no, because I've never seen anybody in the temple that's high enough to have given me that true thing. It's just there's pictures, but all the pictures are different because anybody has, if you look at basic lore in general, an angel can be 7 arms, billion wings, a giant circle glowing, or just a big light. Or if you go to supernatural, which Castalos Castiel, that's where I got that from.
From the show?
From the show. I love
Oh.
Supernatural.
Oh, boy.
So that's where, well, I was trying to figure out a name. I'm like, Castalos sounds good. So Castiel Castalos, that's where I got that from. He's not the same. He doesn't wear a trench coat. He doesn't say, well, he might actually, because it makes sense why I'm that dumb.
Well, that was gonna be my next guess. Is like, how do you picture him? What is your headcanon of what does he look like to you?
I feel that he is like an archangel in a sense. He's got celestial, just glowing gold and silver armor, and he carries a sword and shield, humongous wings, and he's probably gonna be not that, because I'm leaving that up to you and what he looks like if he does show up, because unfortunately I don't think that we're gonna get to that leveling to where he'll appear,
We
because
won't get to level
isn't that level
10.
10?
Level 10 is when the divine intervention comes in, right? But we won't
So-
get that. But you never know. You never know what could happen
Right,
in
but
an epic adventure.
I feel that he looks that we have similar appearances, chiseled jaw, the long hair, but he's probably gonna have more of like a whitish silver hair rather than the goldy blonde that I have. He's gonna have 2 eyes that are perfectly good, and he's gonna have really nice shoes.
Okay. I guess that's an important thing.
But he's probably gonna have he's gonna have a really nice shield. He's gonna have a crest on his shield and on his chest, similar to mine, of course, which I haven't really figured out 100%, but it probably will just be like a lightning bolt coming out of a cloud or something. And he's gonna have just a really nice sword.
Mm-hmm.
So that hopefully one day I will be able to be passed down, and if that would ever come into play.
If you earn it.
If I earn it. And that's my main goal, is to try to find who killed my mother, because that's his. I'm supposed to come and smite that person in a sense. My main mission is to find who did this so that he can get closure. And then go on from there, and hopefully I don't lose my powers or whatever have you. Like, hopefully that's not the only thing that he's asking me to do, but...
Right. Interesting. Okay. All right. This has given me some more insight to kind of build in and fill in other things as well. So that's kind of interesting. So now let's get into some gossip. Based on the first session, what are your thoughts about your adventure companions, the characters?
Based off of just session 1 and
Just
not
session
going
1.
further.
Yeah, just session 1.
Well, Ironbark, the metal, the wood tin man, thinks that I'm lunatic, and he thinks that good berries will definitely help ail whatever is wrong with me. Zavis and me seem to be the most of friends, that we've known each other longer, because he's, in session 0, he said that he found me helping out a little boy, and saw that I was more of a protector part, and that's where he kind of came into me. And we do a lot of things together, just like Zavis or Ironbark and I can't think of Arsalan. Thank you. Clearly, he's that important, because he can't hit a broadside of a barn. And then there's Barry. Who we worship so much, because Barry is the glue that holds us together.
At this
with
point,
good
it
berries.
seems like it. Yeah, he's there in the he's in the trenches with you guys on the front lines.
Can we talk a little bit about our after game, when this whole thing's over, how we talk about playing out with Barry?
Oh yeah. Give me the recap.
Barry's basically gonna be the only one alive, and it's gonna be like in 300, where he's talking about the story, and he's gonna have this deep.
James Earl Jones.
And then we sat there.
I don't remember who said it, but
all of us.
No, there in the session 1, I know Anthony said he sounds kind of like Mufasa, which is James Earl Jones, but then someone in the chat was like, Barry Earl Jones is his name. So I'm like, that's my headcanon, that's that. Barry Earl Jones. But he survives, and he goes on to tell your story.
Like in 300.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's how it's gonna go, and he's gonna have that deep voice, and it's just gonna be hilarious. And he's gonna write a book, and it's yes, he's going to be
Write a book.
You know what I mean? He's got powers, okay? He can talk, for goodness sake.
Kind of, yeah. Okay.
But if it wasn't for Barry, we would have probably had worse roles. which were
That's
still
true.
really
Barry
bad.
was giving you guys a lot of help, and it was good. Yeah, I'm really curious to see where Barry ends up after all this. I'm curious to see where the rest of you guys end up. So we have another question. Let's answer this question. It might be. I think this is your brother, isn't Ripping Rain your brother?
Yeah, that's my brother.
Okay. So do you start with your backstory and personality first to determine what they'll be in the game, or do you build your character and pad it? What method did you take on this one?
The way I took it is I just tried to create something right off the fly, and then got a lot of information through reading and from all other players, and you was included, and then changed it all within a week's time because I had more time to, think about it, fester on it, and I'm like, this sounds better, and this sounds better, and then literally driving to and from work, thinking, what else would make sense, and then just put it together. And that's how it kind of came to be. And then while playing, but like, I don't know if he means like you met in a tavern and now you're explaining yourself like I'm this person and I did this. We didn't do that at all. We kind of already knew, we set it up as we knew who we all were because we were on that voyage for a month long. So we kind of got that part out of the way, and that was what the session 0 was, to try to explain. So we already knew what we were coming into.
Yeah, and I'll just say as a DM, I look at that and I think the session 0 was good. I do like the exercises we did where I had you guys, come into explain how you bonded with each other and became friends. But then I should have had some of that come into play in that session 1, so then the people could see the characters playing these things out somehow. So I dropped the ball there, but you did do an interesting thing though. You knew going into it that you wanted a Tempest Cleric.
Yes.
At least. I don't know if you had the race picked out right away.
No.
But I remember early on you were like, Tempest Cleric, that's it. That's the one. Tempest Cleric. And then you kind of built your world around that. When you were coming up with the idea of the Tempest Cleric, did you already have the personality in mind, or did that come up later as well?
Yes and no. I thought of the whole Thor thing. That's where I kind of got my idea, because he is a take action now, ask questions later, and he's not the smartest person in the world, but he's got that charisma, and that's where I built my character up. I've got a lot of charisma, I've got a lot of wisdom, but I'm not smart at all. At all.
Yeah.
And that does definitely play into everything. The jokes, the puns, the
I can see that. I mean, a lot of it is a common intelligence is a good dump stat for a lot of the different classes. So just as a side note, when you're thinking about ability score improvements, my way of doing it is always like don't. I ignore the dump stat completely. Like I have a level 11 rogue, and I was dumb, and I made his dump stat strength. And I still have not put a single point into his strength because I'm like, it's his dump stat. My other party will deal with the strength things. I'll be fine. I got to make my stuff good. But other people I know want kind of a more even kind of playing field with their ability scores, because then become a little more well-rounded. But so that's my advice on ability score improvements: is ignore intelligence. Enjoy being, the dumb one, because it's fun.
I have.
And I actually think it's easier to play kind of stupid and be kind of oblivious to things, depending on the situation, of course, than it is to try to be the smart one. Because if you're smart in real life,
you roll really bad.
Then you roll. No, just sometimes it's harder to play, in my opinion. I'm not like, I think about things, and if I'm like get in a puzzle situation, I'm usually the one who would have an idea of how to solve the puzzle that's wrong as my character, and then I'm like, well, my character is smart, but I'm kind of dumb right here, so it doesn't work out.
Right.
That's my 2 cents on that one. Let's take another question from Jack Grimble. He says, what other class and race would you really like to play? Let's start with that one.
See, I've always played a rogue in like World of Warcraft and in any other sort of games, because that's just where I'm comfortable with. I've played as a rogue forever because I like the sneaky aspect. I like being able to go in, do as much damage as possible, do some poisons, and then jump back out. And I didn't want to do that this time because I didn't want to be comfortable.
Mhm.
Because being a rogue, and then on top of that, being a rogue is like the typical, first time ever playing, either be a rogue or be a paladin or something.
Yeah.
So I wanted to try to be a bringer of mass chaos and not know how to use it, because that's exactly how it came out to be. Which hopefully, we get another battle in. I learn my lesson a little bit, and I can really do some crazy stuff, because I want to. You've been doing a lot of the whole. We'll see how you want to play it out, and I'll allow it as long as it's not too crazy. And I'm gonna definitely use that to my advantage and make some dumb things happen, because I've done that already.
So this is the whatchamacallit. This is your out of your comfort zone class then.
Other than if I were to be like a wizard, because I have no idea, how I would do that. So I'm, playing a wizard would be fun too, and I'd probably roll a little bit better than Anthony. So I mean, Papa. I saw that he
Anthony,
came
you're
in.
welcome to rebuttal that when you feel like it. To answer your question for me, Jack, yes, the other groups are going to be playing in the same world of Yindir, but not necessarily the same time frame. This particular party, they all kind of voted, and their main interest was Second Age, which is a more normal Dungeons and Dragons kind of time. I also have a First Age, which is a more prehistoric kind of in Conan the Barbarian. I have a Third Age, which is kind of getting into Eberron or a steampunk, and then I have Fourth Age, which is straight up steampunk and technology. So I have a bunch of different timelines. So each group is going to be in a different time frame, and depending on how the players want to play it.
And then you pull us in after that session's over.
Ideally.
And then we all play together, and we make one long 6-year campaign.
Oh, man. I actually have a DM that I look up to a lot who's been playing for 30 years in the same world that he started 30 years ago, and he has the whole intersecting storylines and stuff.
That's so cool.
And I actually got to play in a one-shot with them. Me and some other D&D creators, we all got together. He ran us in a one-shot. And it was this really cool adventure, just like your heroes, you got to go, or your soldiers, got to go take over this dwarven keep, and then we get to the dwarven keep and discover, oh, these dwarves are not actually, they're not the threat in this case. So then it's like, well, now we have to defend these against the other soldiers because they're not the danger to us. And we go through this whole process, and in the end, for some reason, we ended up all dying, and we saved a baby. We had a baby, we were able to save him, this one baby. And then he was like, oh yeah, that baby is actually a player character who's been playing with me for 10 years, and we never knew how he survived this moment in history, and you guys just played out the way he survived. So now I'm going to go tell him how he survives.
That's so cool.
It's crazy. The guy who was the final, saving grace of the kid was a cleric, and he just, had this epic moment. One of the home rules in that was we can have an epic moment when we're about to die in exchange for not having any death saved. So it's like you get the epic moment, but you're dead afterwards. And he was able to use that to keep the baby alive somehow.
That's so cool. See, and that's what I like about every session. This one, the end of session 1 was like a big whoa with the whole horde of hobgoblins. It's like, oh, we're in for a lot of, but not to go too far, but just foreshadowing session 2, just mind blowing, and it's I've never been sucked into it more than that. So session 2 is definitely where it starts to get really crazy.
I'm glad you enjoyed that. Let's
I
take
think we all did.
I hope so. And I hope I can keep it coming, because we're recording session 3 tomorrow. I hope I got it all prepared good enough, guys. Another question. I don't want your opinion on this. Is there a cleric subclass that is underutilized? I know you kind of watched some of my videos. Do you have any thoughts on this? As a brand new player, which subclass do you think is a little underpowered or unappealing?
I don't know about underpowered, but the death domain, I'm still a little bit, I didn't know what death domain was until even though I've watched it with Caduceus. He's a death domain cleric, and I never knew that. So I was like, okay, now it's really playing into effect, because I thought that the death domain, he would be rising, necromancy kind of stuff, but really he's more of a decomposing. So the way he
Mhm.
plays it is definitely different. But um, I don't know. I mean, I think they all have their place. I
Mhm.
just don't know what place that would be, depending on what scenarios it is. Because like with our, the way that the game works is that the DM kind of plays into what the domain that they have is, and then builds the world around that.
Yeah.
So if I was a death domain, you would have played around that. If I was a light domain, you would have played it around that more too. Like you wouldn't be like, oh well, we're gonna do a bunch of storm stuff, but you're
Yeah.
up, a light domain. Like it makes no sense. So
Yeah. That's just a
I
good note for DMs in general. Like
right.
build your world around your players more. And Anthony is saying it is the grave domain actually, not
Grave
death.
domain. That's what I meant.
Um,
Yes.
but it's close enough. And I kind of agree. Is it? Now I have to look this up. I have to look it up because is there a death domain and a grave domain? I
Let's
did a whole
see.
series on this and now I can't remember.
The domains. There's a grave domain. There's a there is a death domain.
There is. Okay.
Arcana, death,
Death
forge,
domain is the quote evil domain. Yeah.
knowledge domain. That's
Knowledge
definitely not
domain
me.
is like a it's like a divination kind of thing. Yeah. Okay. There's so many domains for clerics. That's one of my kind of annoying things. Like there's so many of them.
And you can create your own.
Oh yeah.
Even
Yeah.
kind of like we did. Usually you have a deity that's like, somebody well known, or it's like something that's similar, but like compared to having it be, oh, you
Your
get your
grandpa.
powers from some god, you get it from your grandpa.
Yeah. That's definitely true, and that's the other thing about the world is the world we're in is like all the deities we're figuring them out as we go. You can be a death domain. I like the idea that death domain is not necessarily evil, just more misunderstood. Yeah, there's 15 official. Oh man, there's so many. I think in my opinion, underutilized. They all have really good things about them, but the one that like well, I already said it in my ranking video. Like, I'm not a fan of the nature domain. As like
Leave
it's
that to the druids.
weird. Yeah, I'm like, just let the druids do that. But then you could look at that with all the other domains too. The trickster domain, trickery domain could be the rogues. You can draw parallels between all of them, and another class. But yeah, the nature domain to me is just like
You also got to
doesn't.
determine how you play it too. Like, typical clerics are healers rather than just doing all the damage. Or that's what my mentality was when I came into it. Like, am I supposed to be healing?
Yeah.
But that's not the case. Kind of like even with Critical Role, Jester, doesn't heal for nothing.
Right.
But she likes to do a lot more of the flary, crazy stuff, which makes her character her own. So it all depends on how you play it too. Because if you play with the Tempest Cleric, I'm not doing a good job being a Tempest Cleric right now because I can't use any of the right spells because I don't remember them. But hopefully that comes into play now that I'm getting more comfortable and familiar, and I'm now feeling maybe I do have a purpose in a sense. So
Yeah. All right. Last question. Last question. And this one, it won't have any it might not have any real bearing on the story, but in an ideal world, what is the future of Raiken?
hopefully being able to finally, well, first it's to finish the mission and defeat who killed my mother and destroyed my village, and from there hopefully finding what might be else out there that he might get his orders from, and ridding the evil of the world. The strong protect the weak is one of my biggest things on my characteristics. But then being able to finally meet my grandfather and make sure that I'm worthy of his presence, and moving forward and finding out who he gets his powers from, and going forth and just ridding the world of evil, and hopefully finding someone to take the shoes.
I think that's a big part of it. Those shoes are important. You have to find the shoes. You found who the purse kind of belongs to. Kind of.
Yes. Yes.
But those shoes, that's a tough one.
The grog.
Yeah. Sad you just dropped it in there. That other.
Hey, it
purse.
made it taste better, probably.
Maybe you did. All right, Zach. Thanks for joining me on the show. Thanks, you guys out on YouTube for watching. Friday is session 2, so hopefully you come back, watch session 2, and are entertained by that.
You don't want to miss it. You don't want to miss it at all. It was so good.
Let's do one last teaser moment. What was a favorite moment of yours from session 2? Just like a brief teaser. That's not giving away too much. If you can think of one.
Well, I can, but I think that if we talk too much about it, it will definitely
Be too much. Okay.
Too much. The fact that none of us can fit in the buildings because we are all too tall is definitely a big play factor. And
about that. You are in a halfling town, halfling village.
And it feels good that Ironbark also thinks that they're little people and they're little boys and they're not human adults.
Yeah.
Or anything of that sort. But it's one thing.
Or how about a noun? Jack is saying give one noun.
Give us one noun. Epic.
There you go.
Just that's not a noun. That's definitely an adjective.
I don't know what words are.
I'm being Raiken. Raiken again. Let's just we can say the well. The well. We'll just say the well.
Okay. That is a noun. That is
the well.
Yeah. So come back Friday to find out what he's talking about in the well. I'll see you tomorrow when we play session 3, Zach. And yeah, so thanks for being here, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm hitting buttons.